Welcome to this explainer. I'm Director 1, joined by Director 2, and today we're tackling a massive question. Practical difficulties or statistical difficulties. We are statistical field directors, and we are basically opening up an investigative dossier today on a highly misunderstood topic in macroeconomics.
That's exactly right. When you hear a news anchor proudly announce that our GDP went up by exactly 4.2%, it sounds like absolute, unshakable science. But as field directors, the actual folks who have to collect this data from millions of citizens on the ground, we can tell you it is incredibly messy. Today, we're exposing the chaotic, real-world operational nightmares of calculating a nation's wealth. Let's dive right in.
Here is our briefing checklist for today. We're tearing down 5 major operational nightmares: the textbook illusion, illiteracy, the non-monetized sector, blurry lines of work, inventory valuation, and finally, unreliable data.
Let's get right to it. Section 1. The textbook illusion, the clean math of the ivory tower. Let's start with how things are supposed to work in theory, right? Right before we show you how quickly all of that completely falls apart in practice.
Just look at this definition from the Government of India's National Income Committee established way back in 1949. It confidently states, a national estimate measures the volume of commodities and services turned out during a given period counted without duplication. Counted without duplication. I mean, it sounds perfectly neat, doesn't it? In a textbook, you literally just use this elegant formula: consumption plus investment plus government spending plus net exports. But when you actually deploy agents into the field to gather those variables, yeah, that academic elegance evaporates completely.
There's just a massive disconnect here. High-level macro views neatly categorize agriculture, trade, and industry into these perfect little pies of progress. We even have specialized concepts now, like green GNP, to try and meticulously track environmental pollution and natural capital depletion. But here's the catch. To calculate any of this, you actually need data. You need receipts, ledgers, and hard numbers. And this is exactly where we abruptly pull you down from that ivory tower and throw you right into the trenches. Because out in the real world, the data doesn't come in neatly formatted spreadsheets. It comes with serious operational nightmares.
Which brings us to Section 2, illiteracy and ignorance, the absence of books.
And just to be clear, when we say books, we definitely don't mean novels. We mean formal books of accounts.
The textbook expectation is that every producer out there maintains beautiful, formal written registers. But the on-the-ground reality in developing nations? It's a completely different story. A vast majority of small-scale farmers and artisans are entirely unaware of regular accounting practices.
Right. They don't keep a daily ledger for yarn or wheat. So when our statisticians knock on a door to ask for an annual production value, what do we actually get? We get rough, incredibly unreliable guesswork. Think about it. We are literally building national economic policy, the very same policy that dictates government budgets and inflation narratives, on estimates pulled from thin air by someone just trying to remember what they did 6 months ago.
Section 3. The non-monetized sector, the invisible barter economy. Director 2. Modern macroeconomics completely assumes a money economy where every exchanged good or service creates a traceable event, but that's simply not true everywhere.
Huge amounts of agricultural output are kept directly for self-consumption by the farmers themselves. So as statisticians, we basically have to guess the imputed value of a farmer's dinner.
And it's even worse when you look at barter exchange. Imagine a rural farmer paying a local laborer with a sack of wheat, or maybe swapping some milk for a haircut. Real economic value was generated, real services were rendered, but absolutely zero money changed hands. It is completely invisible to formal national records, which artificially shrinks the perceived size of the economy we report to the world. Crazy, right?
Which feeds right into Section 4. Lack of occupational specialization. Blurry lines of work. In advanced economies, you just add up rents, wages, interest, and profit. It relies heavily on people having clear, defined jobs. But in developing nations, that clarity is practically non-existent.
Follow the chaotic yearly schedule of a single rural resident for a second. For the first 4 months, during the monsoon, they're a farmer. For the next 4 months, when the harvest is done, they move to a town and become a casual construction laborer earning daily wages. And for the last 4 months, they're back in their village running a small side dairy. Now put yourself in our shoes trying to track this under the income method. This person does not have a single, clear, specialized occupation with clean tax brackets. Their income streams are chaotic, seasonal, and largely undocumented. It all just merges into a giant statistical black hole we call mixed income. So when you hear about national wage growth on the news, remember how notoriously difficult it is to measure this accurately on the ground.
Section 5. Valuation of inventories, capital realities, and accounting errors. Shifting away from rural farms to factory floors and city real estate brings an entirely different flavor of statistical headache.
Let's talk about market illusions. Say you want a piece of real estate, or maybe a warehouse full of steel, and the market price suddenly spikes by 300% due to speculation. Naturally, you feel richer. But did your warehouse produce 300% more actual goods? No! National income only cares about the flow of fresh goods and services produced in a single year. Capital gains, or capital losses for that matter, must be entirely stripped away from our calculations because they just reflect market illusions, not fresh, real production. Tracking this down and deducting it properly across an entire nation's assets to give you an accurate GDP, it's a massive operational nightmare.
And finally, Section 6. Inadequate and unreliable data. The Great Statistical Approximation. This is the overarching shadow that plagues the entire system, despite our absolute best efforts to catch everything.
Reality is, we have massive systemic data gaps. We completely lack exact figures for minor crops, vast amounts of livestock products, and those small-scale cottage industries operating literally out of people's living rooms. They are practically invisible to us. Even basic consumer consumption habits in unregulated markets are largely undocumented. Because we simply don't have hard, concrete data for these vital sectors, our government statisticians are forced to plug the holes with educated guesses just to make the final equation work. The data driving global investments is honestly less exact math and more a highly educated statistical mosaic.
Which leaves us with a really sobering realization. These aren't just abstract numbers. They dictate government policies, your interest rates, and huge global investments.
If the foundational metrics of our national income are heavily built on guesswork, barter estimations, and arbitrary approximations, just how exact is the economy we read about in the news every single day?
Something to think about. Thanks for diving into the trenches with us on this explainer. Next time you see a GDP headline, keep questioning the numbers.